on! Are you serious? This is so ridiculous. I can't believe I'm even wasting my time here.
Save the whining for someone who cares. This courtroom isn't your playground.
Oi! Are you kidding me, you old hag? Who do you think you are talking to me like that?
Get ready, because what you're about to witness is not just another courtroom scene. This is a legendary clash of arrogance versus authority, a 47-second spectacle that left everyone in Judge Judy's courtroom stunned. The moment Karen Mitchell, a self-absorbed suburban mother convinced that a few Google searches and a folder full of online legal research could outsmart a real judge, stepped into the courtroom, she had no idea she was walking straight into a trap she could never escape. Karen, the type of person who demanded to speak to the manager over the smallest perceived injustice, arrived with all the confidence of someone who thought she had the system figured out. Blonde highlights shining under the courtroom lights. Designer outfit meticulously chosen, leather portfolio clutched like a weapon. She strutted in as though she were about to teach the nation's most feared TV judge a lesson. The audience, accustomed to minor disputes and small claims, sensed the tension immediately. But they had no idea they were about to witness a true masterclass in courtroom authority. Judge Judy, ever the predator disguised as a calm authority, had already analyzed Karen's paperwork before the woman even spoke. 17 lies. 17 outright fabrications hidden between the lines of Karen's case. And Judy knew exactly how this performance would unfold. Every smirk, every condescending glance, every half-hearted sigh would be cataloged and used as ammunition in what was about to become one of the most brutal legal dismantlings ever televised. Karen, however, remained blissfully unaware. In her mind, she was about to shine. To prove that a Google law degree could outwit decades of judicial expertise, the case itself seemed trivial. An $800 designer handbag, allegedly ruined during a dinner party, and Karen seeking justice, or more accurately, validation against her former friend, Rebecca Torres. The producers had penciled this in as a standard 15-minute segment. Nothing special, just another case of entitlement clashing with reality. But Judge Judy saw the bigger picture. She knew this was a perfect storm: arrogance, ignorance, and the audacity to treat a courtroom like a personal stage dot. As Karen took her seat, she smiled at the cameras, already envisioning herself going viral for her smart legal strategies. She didn't notice Judge Judy's calm, calculating gaze, the type that could dissect a human being in a single look. Judy opened the case with her signature precision, her voice cutting through the air with a mix of authority and surgical exactness. "Miss Mitchell, you're suing Miss Torres for $800, claiming she damaged your designer handbag at a dinner party. Tell me exactly what happened." Simple words. But for Karen, this was the cue to launch into her theatrical display of entitlement disguised as legal reasoning. "Well, Your Honor," Karen began, her voice dripping with faux sophistication, "this woman completely destroyed my limited edition Coach bag through sheer negligence. I mean, as anyone with common sense would know, which obviously she lacks, she has no respect for other people's property." At this point, the audience began to feel the first tremors of what would become a courtroom earthquake. Judge Judy's eyebrow raised slightly, a subtle warning sign to those who knew her style. "Ms. Mitchell," interrupted the judge, "I didn't ask for a character analysis. I asked what happened to your bag." The courtroom went silent. Karen, however, misread this as a challenge, not a warning. She let out a theatrical sigh, the kind usually reserved for exasperated retail employees dealing with incompetent customers. "Well, if you let me finish, Your Honor, I was trying to provide context," she said. That was the spark that lit the fuse. Judge Judy leaned forward, voice dropping to a calm yet terrifying level. "Did you just sigh at me in my courtroom?" The question sliced through the air like a scalpel. Karen, blissfully arrogant, smirked, seemingly unaware that she had just triggered a legal hurricane. She turned toward the audience as if sharing a secret joke about the judge's supposed incompetence. Judge Judy's response was immediate and unyielding. "Ms. Mitchell, let's save everyone some time. Based on your evidence and your attitude, I am ruling in favor of the defendant. You get nothing. Case dismissed." The gavel struck with the finality of a guillotine blade. And yet, Corinne's meltdown was just beginning. She shot upright, portfolio and papers scattering across the floor, and screamed, "Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. You don't understand basic contract law." Every viewer in that room could feel the tension crackling like electricity. This wasn't just another angry plaintiff. This was a storm of entitlement meeting an immovable force of authority. Karen pointed a shaking finger at Judge Judy, wagging it like she was disciplining a child, insisting, "I have case precedents that contradict your ruling. You obviously aren't keeping up with legal developments." The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Judge Judy, perfectly composed, let Corinne unravel before the cameras. Every smirk, every gesture, every word was a misstep, a miscalculation in a game she couldn't win. And the countdown to the ultimate 47-second verbal annihilation had officially begun. Corinne laughed, dismissively at the camera. "This is exactly why I don't watch this show." She clearly has no idea what she's talking about. The arrogance was palpable. The audience winced, knowing that Judge Judy had seen it all before, and was about to deliver a lesson that would be studied for decades. With slow, deliberate movement, Judy rose from her chair. Eyes locked on Corinne with the precision of a predator about to strike. "Let me educate you." "Young lady," Judy began, her voice dropping into that terrifying calm tone. She picked up Corinne's scattered papers, holding up the flimsy internet printouts with absolute disdain. "These are not case precedents. They're garbage written by people who couldn't pass the bar if their lives depended on it." Corinne tried to speak, but Judy's hand cut through the air. "Did I give you permission to talk?" "No, close your mouth and learn something." The audience froze. This was no longer a case. It was a masterclass in judicial authority. One by one, Judy dismantled every article, every so-called precedent Karen had printed, exposing them as outdated, irrelevant, or outright fraudulent. The first 300 seconds of Karen's unraveling had begun. Her face drained of color, eyes widening in disbelief. The courtroom was no longer a room, it was a cage, and Karen had walked straight into it, thinking she was the 100. Karen Mitchell's smirk was the last sign of her confidence the courtroom would ever see. In the next moments, the weight of her arrogance collided with the unrelenting force of Judge Judy's authority. Every second stretched into an eternity, the tension so thick it felt like it could be cut with a knife. The cameras captured every detail, every twitch, every falter. And Karen, for all her preparation and self-assuredness, had no idea she was seconds away from witnessing the full consequences of underestimating a true legal titan. Judge Judy held the internet printouts with a mix of disgust and barely restrained fury. "You want to talk about current legal developments?" she asked, voice steady but cold enough to freeze the blood. "I've presided over 20,000 cases. I've forgotten more law than you'll ever pretend to know. And yet, you come into my courtroom, think 3 weeks of Google research qualifies as expertise, and lecture me about the law?" Karen opened her mouth to respond, but words failed her for the first time. Her usual arsenal of condescension and rehearsed arguments had evaporated under the weight of genuine fear. She could feel the eyes of the audience boring into her, watching a woman who had walked in with the confidence of a conqueror slowly crumble in real time. Judge Judy didn't pause. She methodically picked apart each argument Corinne had clung to one by one. "This article you printed about property damage law? Written by a paralegal who was fired for incompetence. This case study? Overturned on appeal 3 years ago. And this so-called legal opinion you're proud of? From a blog run by a man disbarred decades ago for fraud. Do you see a pattern here?" Karen's hands trembled, clutching at her scattered papers like they might somehow defend her. Her voice began to wobble. I just thought," she stammered, the rehearsed confidence in her tone replaced with panic. "Thought?" Judge Judy's sharp tone cut through the courtroom. "You thought? That's your defense, thought?" "Young lady, thought doesn't hold up in my courtroom. Facts do, evidence does. Respect does. And so far, you've had none of these." Asterisk, the audience could feel the energy shift. Karen's face had lost all color, cycling from pale to ghostly white. her designer makeup streaking from frantic movements and rising anxiety. Every eye in the room was glued to the transformation. This was no ordinary courtroom dispute. This was a spectacle of hubris meeting undeniable authority. "You mocked my intelligence," Judge Judy continued, voice rising just enough to command attention without tipping into rage. "You rolled your eyes. You sighed. You wagged your finger at me, accusing me of ignorance. And now you have the audacity to stand there expecting anything other than the consequences of your actions?" Karen tried again, voice trembling now. But her protest was swallowed by the courtroom silence. It was as if every sound had been suspended, leaving only the sound of her racing heartbeat filling the space. Judge Judy leaned forward, eyes narrowing, voice dropping to a tone that made grown adults shiver. "Here's the reality, Miss Mitchell. In this courtroom, respect is mandatory. Authority is absolute. And your arrogance has cost you. Not only will you receive nothing for your handbag, but I am awarding the defendant full court costs. $2,500. Consider it a lesson in humility." The gavel came down, each strike echoing like the tolling of a bell, marking the end of Karen's delusions. She staggered in her seat, hands pressed to her face, as if trying to shield herself from the harsh reality of the situation. Her leather portfolio lay in ruins at her feet, papers scattered across the courtroom like the remnants of her failed self-assurance. Her friend, sitting nearby, tried to offer a sympathetic glance, but Karen couldn't meet her eyes. The hubris that had driven her to plan this courtroom performance with social media followers in mind had evaporated, replaced by raw, unfiltered despair. "Wait," Karen finally gasped, her voice cracking. "This isn't fair. You can't just..." Judge Judy's glare froze her mid-sentence. "Fair? You want to talk about fairness? You treated this courtroom like a stage for your personal theatrics. You mocked the law, mocked me, and now you complain about fairness? Miss Mitchell, fairness doesn't exist for the arrogant." Karen's sobs started softly at first, but quickly intensified. Her words became incoherent pleas, a desperate attempt to rewrite reality. I didn't mean any disrespect. I was passionate. Please, Your Honor, I didn't. Passionate? Judge Judy's voice carried the weight of steel. "Is that what you call sighing, rolling your eyes, and wagging your finger in my courtroom? Passionate? That's not passion, Ms. Mitchell. That's entitlement, and entitlement gets destroyed here. Your behavior has consequences. And today, you are the example." The audience watched in stunned silence as the woman who had walked in thinking herself untouchable was reduced to trembling. Desperate apologies. Tears streamed down her face, smudging her carefully applied makeup into dark streaks. Each word she uttered now sounded fragile, pleading, utterly powerless. I'm sorry," she gasped, voice breaking completely. "Please, I can't afford this. I didn't know. I made a mistake." Judge Judy remained unmoved. Every second was a lesson, every word a strike of accountability. "Now you're sorry," she said, eyes piercing into Karen's very soul. "Now you choose to show respect? Where was that attitude when you mocked me? When you treated this courtroom like a comedy club?" Karen's hands shook as she tried to regain control. But control had left her the moment she underestimated Judge Judy. The sobs grew louder, echoing through the courtroom and hallway beyond. A haunting soundtrack to her complete unraveling. The judge's final words, cut like a blade. "The judgment stands. Ms. Torres is awarded $2,500 in court costs. Ms. Mitchell, you are dismissed from my courtroom. Next time, show some respect." The gavel came down one final time, sealing Karen's fate. Her shoulders slumped, her body shaking, sobs still racking her frame. What had begun as a triumphant walk into the courtroom had ended in a public, unforgettable humiliation. Social media would soon explode with clips of Karen's meltdown. Her dismissive laugh, her condescending smirk, and the final moments of her sobbing would go viral, a cautionary tale for entitled behavior everywhere. Karen had become, unwillingly, a symbol of what happens when arrogance confronts experience, and ignorance confronts authority. Within moments, millions would witness her downfall. Every eye roll, Every sarcastic comment, every gesture of disrespect meticulously catalogued and dismantled by Judge Judy's unmatched precision. Karen had walked into the courtroom expecting victory. She left knowing the harshest lesson of her life. In Judge Judy's courtroom, respect is not optional, and consequences are absolute. Karen Mitchell's world had crumbled completely, yet the courtroom wasn't done with her. She had left a trail of papers, tears, and disbelief in her wake, and the cameras captured every detail. Her sobs echoed like a warning bell to anyone who thought they could challenge authority without consequence. But outside the courtroom, the fallout was only beginning, and Karen was about to discover that humiliation, once televised, doesn't fade, it multiplies. As she was escorted from the courtroom, Karen's mind raced, attempting to piece together what had just happened. She had walked in expecting applause, social media likes, and the thrill of proving herself smarter than a celebrity judge. Instead, she was leaving with shredded dignity, a hefty court fee, and a viral moment that would follow her for years. Every step down the corridor felt heavier than the last. Her designer shoes clicked on the polished floor, but they couldn't mask the sound of her panic and self-recrimination. Meanwhile, the courtroom itself remained a study in controlled chaos. Judge Judy returned to her bench with the calm of a general surveying the aftermath of a battle she had already won. The audience, still processing what they had witnessed, whispered among themselves. Many had expected Karen's usual tantrums, but none had anticipated the precision and brutality with which the judge had dismantled her case. Conversations in the room circled around disbelief, awe, and, for some, vindication. The producers, camera operators, and court staff quietly reviewed the footage, knowing they had just captured something exceptional. Clips of Karen's meltdown would soon dominate social media. Memes were already forming in people's minds: the smug smirk, the dramatic sigh, the futile pointing finger, and the final sobs that transformed her from a confident plaintiff into a cautionary tale of entitlement. The audience had witnessed history in the making, a masterclass in authority crushing arrogance, and everyone in the room felt the weight of the lesson being delivered. Karen, however, remained oblivious to the magnitude of her actions in the eyes of the public. In the cab on the way home, she replayed the events over and over, her thoughts fragmented. It wasn't fair, she kept muttering, her voice shaking. I did my research. I was prepared. Why didn't anyone understand me? Her reflection in the taxi window was a stranger. The same carefully styled hair and makeup were now ruined, streaked by tears, her eyes swollen from crying. It was a portrait of defeat. By the time Karen returned home, social media had already exploded. Clips from the episode were uploaded within minutes, each garnering thousands of views within the first hour. The hashtag Karen vs. Judge Judy was trending, her meltdown dissected and analyzed by millions. Comments ranged from outright laughter to incredulous astonishment at the audacity and subsequent downfall. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues who hadn't been aware of her court appearance began to send texts, tag her in posts, and share the clips widely. Karen's online persona, carefully curated for years, was now overshadowed by this viral moment. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Messages from friends started with sympathetic tones but quickly became judgmental. I saw the video, one read. Are you okay? That looked intense. Others were blunt. You totally deserve that. You can't just treat a courtroom like a joke. The stream of notifications became overwhelming, a digital avalanche of embarrassment, and Karen couldn't stop reading them. Each comment reinforced the reality she had tried to ignore. Her arrogance had consequences, and the world was watching, even her former legal research. The Google articles and blog posts she had clung to for validation now seemed laughably inadequate. What she had believed would demonstrate intelligence and preparation now appeared naive and misguided. The internet, a tool she had once wielded to craft her supposed superiority, had instead become a mirror reflecting every misstep, every act of disrespect, and every ounce of her inflated ego. Her friends tried to console her, but Karen couldn't accept the comfort. It's not fair, she kept repeating, unable to comprehend that fairness had no place in a courtroom ruled by expertise and authority. She attempted to rationalize the experience, blaming external factors, the judge, the rules, the audience. But deep down, a small seed of understanding began to take root. She had underestimated the power of experience, the weight of authority, and the inevitability of consequences when arrogance oversteps boundaries. Over the next few days, the clips continued to circulate, and Corinne became the focus of viral commentary. Legal forums debated Judge Judy's handling of the case, praising the precision and decisiveness with which she dismantled Corinne's arguments. Social media users dissected the meltdown frame by frame, highlighting moments of arrogance, panic, and eventual submission. Corinne's name became synonymous with entitled behavior in the court system, a modern parable of hubris meeting justice. Asterisk, even within her local community, reactions were swift and unrelenting. Neighbors recognized her in public, some pointing and whispering, others attempting to stifle laughter as they recalled the now famous 47-second humiliation. At her workplace, colleagues sent links to the videos, leaving sticky notes with sarcastic encouragement. Don't let this happen again. Every familiar space became a reminder that her public misjudgment had consequences beyond the courtroom walls. Despite the embarrassment, Karen couldn't fully escape the lesson. The viral nature of her experience forced her to reflect, whether she wanted to or not. For the first time, she began to grasp the concept that respect is not optional and that authority, especially experienced, unyielding authority, cannot be outwitted with attitude or theatrics. Her previous mindset, one built on arrogance, manipulation, and entitlement, began to show cracks. The realization was bitter but unavoidable. Meanwhile, Judge Judy's handling of the case became a teaching moment. Legal professionals analyzed her tactics, noting the meticulous preparation, the ability to anticipate lies, and the way she used psychological insight to maintain control over the courtroom. Law students and casual viewers alike studied the video, understanding that courtroom success was rooted not in arrogance or bravado, but in preparation, respect, and command of facts. Corinne had inadvertently become a case study in what happens when entitlement meets mastery. By the end of the week, Corinne's life had changed permanently. The incident was no longer confined to a single courtroom. It had become part of public consciousness. She had gone from confident, self-assured, and dismissive to a cautionary tale recognized nationwide. The emotional toll was immense, but the lesson was crystal clear. Disrespect has a price, and arrogance has consequences that extend far beyond a single moment. Corinne would never enter a courtroom or confront authority again without the weight of this experience pressing on her. The viral footage continued to spread, ensuring that her story would serve as both a warning and a lesson for anyone tempted to think themselves above the law. And while she struggled to regain her composure and reputation, one undeniable truth remained. Judge Judy had delivered more than a legal ruling. She had orchestrated an unforgettable lesson in accountability, humility, and the cost of unchecked entitlement. Karen Mitchell tried desperately to piece together her life after the courtroom fiasco, but the consequences followed her like a shadow she couldn't escape. Every notification on her phone felt like a hammer striking the fragile remains of her dignity. The viral clips of her meltdown weren't just circulating, they were dominating social media, being replayed and dissected endlessly. Each view, each share, each mocking comment was a reminder that her arrogance had left a permanent mark. At home, the reality of her situation began to sink in. Karen sat in her carefully curated living room, still in the outfit she had worn to court, papers from her failed argument scattered across the coffee table. Her designer handbag, the catalyst for this entire debacle, now seemed absurd in its importance. The $800 she had fought over suddenly felt inconsequential compared to the $3,300 she now owed in court costs and fines. But the financial burden was secondary. The emotional and social costs, the public humiliation, the judgment of neighbors, colleagues, and strangers was crushing. Karen attempted to rationalize her actions, trying to rewrite the narrative in her mind. I was prepared, she muttered to herself. I did my research. Judge Judy, she overreacted. But even as the words left her lips, she felt the hollow ring of denial. Every clip she watched online, every comment she read, chipped away at her self-assured facade. The very audience she had expected to admire her cleverness was now laughing, mocking, and shaking their heads at her naive overconfidence. Her friends, initially sympathetic, began to distance themselves. Some offered gentle advice, urging her to reflect on the consequences, while others openly laughed at the clips, unable to hide their amusement. At work, the gossip spread like wildfire. Colleagues brought up the viral moments with barely contained chuckles, asking questions like, "So, did the judge really shut you down that fast?" Karen's attempts to respond with humor fell flat. The embarrassment clung to her, refusing to be shaken off. Even in her personal life, the consequences were inescapable. Invitations to social events slowed, phone calls from acquaintances dwindled, and casual interactions became awkward. The once confident woman who had believed she could control every situation now felt like a stranger in her own life. Her social persona, built on charm and entitlement, had been stripped away in 47 seconds, leaving a raw, vulnerable, an exposed individual in its place. Karen tried to return to her usual routines, but everything reminded her of the courtroom and her spectacular downfall. Walking into a boutique, she imagined whispers and stifled laughter behind her back. Ordering a latte, she pictured baristas judging her every move, secretly replaying the viral clips in their heads. Her previous confidence, the very trait that had emboldened her to confront Judge Judy, had been replaced with a constant, nagging anxiety. Every glance, every conversation, every online interaction now carried the weight of past humiliation. Meanwhile, the internet frenzy continued unabated. Legal forums analyzed the case, praising Judge Judy's precision and dissecting Karen's errors. Videos were edited, clips slowed down frame by frame, highlighting her gestures of arrogance, the smirk, the sigh, the wagging finger, and juxtaposing them against Judy's calm authority. Memes proliferated, some sympathetic, most merciless. Karen's name became shorthand for entitlement colliding with reality. Hashtag Karen vs Judge Judy trended for days. Her meltdown, a template for discussions about public accountability, social media virality, and the importance of humility. Karen's attempts to recover were fraught with difficulty. She deleted comments, blocked users, and even temporarily deactivated some social media accounts, but the content had already gone viral. Screenshots, reposts, and news articles ensured the moment would live on indefinitely. She realized, painfully, that her reputation had been irrevocably altered. No matter how hard she tried, she could no longer control the narrative. Her image, meticulously curated over years, had been replaced by a single, unforgettable 47-second meltdown dot in the quiet moments. When she was alone with her thoughts, the lesson became undeniable. Arrogance, no matter how cleverly masked as intelligence, cannot outmaneuver true experience. Entitlement, when left unchecked, leads to consequences far beyond financial loss. The humiliation she suffered was not random. It was the direct result of disrespecting authority, underestimating expertise, and overestimating one's own cleverness. Each replay of the courtroom footage served as a painful reminder of this truth. Karen also began to notice the subtle shifts in her own thinking. The immediate defense mechanisms, the blame, the denial, the excuses, slowly gave way to reflection. She started to recognize that her attitude in the courtroom had been a pattern throughout her life. Dismissive of rules, contemptuous of authority, and obsessed with personal validation. The viral humiliation, as devastating as it was, forced her to confront these patterns in ways that no casual reflection could achieve. Friends and family noticed the change too. Karen's interactions became more measured, less reactive. She listened more, argued less, and approached conflicts with a newfound awareness of boundaries and respect. While this transformation was painful, it was also profound. The courtroom experience, once a source of embarrassment and anger, became a turning point, a catalyst for personal growth that she had never anticipated. Judge Judy, meanwhile, remained a figure of authority and precision in the public consciousness. Her handling of the case became a blueprint for accountability, respect, and the importance of preparation. Lawyers, students, and viewers cited her dismantling of Karen's arguments as a lesson in professionalism and the dangers of arrogance. In effect, Karen's downfall served a dual purpose: a personal wake-up call and a public demonstration of judicial mastery. Over time, Karen began to accept the reality of her situation. She understood that humility is not weakness, that preparation must be thorough, and that respect is non-negotiable when facing authority. The pain of public scrutiny, the weight of viral exposure, and the memory of those 47 seconds became internalized lessons. They reshaped not only her approach to conflict, but also her understanding of responsibility, accountability, and the true meaning of respect. By the end of this period, Karen had undergone a transformation, albeit one forged in fire and humiliation. She had confronted the consequences of entitlement head-on, learned the cost of underestimating experience, and begun the painstaking process of rebuilding both her confidence and her reputation. While the scars of public humiliation would remain, they served as constant reminders that arrogance is fleeting. But wisdom gained from consequence endures. Time passed. But the memory of that courtroom ordeal never left Karen Mitchell. The viral footage, the endless replay of her meltdown, and the public scrutiny became a constant backdrop to her life. At first, every glance in a mirror reminded her of the woman who had walked into Judge Judy's courtroom with arrogance and entitlement. But slowly, with reflection and humility, she began to see a different version of herself, one shaped by lessons learned the hard way. Karen's days became structured around introspection and rebuilding. The financial consequences of her $3,300 loss were daunting, but manageable. What was far more challenging was repairing the social and emotional damage. Friends who had once envied her confidence now offered support, but often with an unspoken caution. Colleagues still whispered, occasionally referencing the infamous clips, reminding her that public perception can be unforgiving. Each interaction served as reinforcement that actions, especially those fueled by arrogance, carry consequences far beyond what one anticipates. Social media, initially a battlefield of ridicule, slowly became a tool for reflection. Karen watched the clips repeatedly, not to relive humiliation, but to understand what went wrong. Each eye roll, each dismissive sigh, each sarcastic comment she had made became a study in self-awareness. She noted the pivotal moments where her choices had directly led to the escalation. Through this, Karen realized that respect and preparation are not optional, they are essential. She also recognized that no amount of perceived intelligence or social savvy could substitute for genuine expertise and humility. In the wider world, Judge Judy's reputation as a master of accountability and authority only grew stronger. Lawyers and viewers alike praised her handling of the case, and Karen's meltdown became a textbook example for discussions about entitlement, respect, and the unforgiving nature of legal authority. The courtroom had not only settled a monetary dispute, but had also created a cultural moment that emphasized the importance of humility. Karen, reluctantly, came to understand that she had become an unintentional teacher, illustrating the very dangers she had once ignored. Karen's personal transformation was gradual but undeniable. She began to approach conflicts differently, listening more and arguing less. She learned to respect authority figures and to appreciate the value of preparation and expertise. Even simple interactions like navigating professional meetings or social disagreements became exercises in patience and humility. The lessons of the courtroom had seeped into every aspect of her life, reshaping her behavior and worldview in ways that superficial education or internet research never could. 1 year after the infamous episode, Karen had a chance encounter with someone who had seen the original viral clip. They approached her cautiously, perhaps expecting the same entitled arrogance captured on television. But what they encountered was a changed woman, someone who spoke with thoughtfulness, who acknowledged mistakes, and who carried herself with a tempered confidence. It was clear that the humiliation she endured had left a lasting impression, transforming her from a symbol of entitlement into a story of redemption and learning. Karen's transformation was not just personal, it became public as well. She cautiously shared her reflections on social media, discussing the importance of humility, preparation, and respect. Her posts surprisingly resonated with many. People who had initially laughed at her courtroom meltdown now saw the value in the lessons she had learned. Karen's story shifted from mockery to inspiration, illustrating how accountability and reflection can foster growth even after public failure in her personal life. Karen also began to repair relationships that had been strained by her arrogance. She apologized to friends and colleagues, acknowledging the ways in which her entitled behavior had caused tension. These apologies were sincere, grounded in the lessons learned from her courtroom experience. Slowly, trust and respect were rebuilt. Karen's social interactions became more genuine, marked by empathy and awareness of the consequences of her actions. Despite the passage of time, the 47-second meltdown remained a defining moment in her life. It was a constant reminder that entitlement has limits and that disrespect carries a price. Karen had learned that true confidence is grounded in knowledge, preparation, and respect, not in bravado or condescension. She had faced the harshest possible consequence, a public, humiliating lesson, and emerged with a clearer understanding of what it means to be accountable for one's actions. Judge Judy's courtroom had delivered justice, but it had also delivered wisdom. Karen's story became a cautionary tale for millions, a dramatic, unforgettable reminder that arrogance cannot outlast authority. Karen Mitchell had entered the courtroom expecting to assert dominance, but she left transformed, humbled, and painfully aware of her own limitations. The lesson was indelible. Disrespect authority, and the consequences will be swift, precise, and unforgettable. Karen never forgot that day. Every reflection, every lesson, every acknowledgement of her mistakes reminded her that humility is not optional, it is essential. She carried the experience forward, allowing it to guide her decisions, interactions, and personal growth. Her life, forever shaped by those 47 seconds, became a testament to the transformative power of accountability and the enduring importance of respect. By the end, Karen Mitchell was no longer the woman who had underestimated Judge Judy. She was someone who had faced her own arrogance, learned the consequences of entitlement, and emerged wiser and more grounded. Her story, once a viral spectacle of humiliation, had evolved into a powerful lesson in personal growth, humility, and the unyielding authority of justice. The courtroom may have been the stage, but the real lesson extended far beyond those walls. Karen's journey became a blueprint for anyone tempted to think themselves above rules, authority, or consequence. And while the memory of that 47-second meltdown would remain forever etched in public memory, the transformation it sparked ensured that Karen Mitchell's legacy would ultimately be one of learning, reflection, and respect earned the hard way. Asterisk if you thought that was intense. Just wait, there are countless more jaw-dropping courtroom stories waiting for you. Every case is packed with drama, lessons, and moments that will leave you speechless. Don't miss out on the next epic showdown. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us as we dive into the most outrageous, unbelievable, and unforgettable courtroom battles ever caught on camera. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single second. Justice, drama, and shocking revelations are just a click away. Subscribe now and let the courtroom chaos unfold.